A very good morning to one and all present here today. I'm Varuna Joshi, Center Coordinator at the NSE Center for Behavioral Science and your conference moderator over the next couple of days. The NSE CBS welcomes you on board the first in-person and third annual edition of the Behavioral Science in Management Conference. Welcome. The NSE Center for Behavioral Science was established at IIMA in March 2020. The first of its kind setup at a management institution in the region, the center is equipped with sophisticated infrastructure and technology, including an electroencephalogram system, eye tracking machines, and galvanic skin response systems. The center's cross-disciplinary scope of work broadly explores the application of behavioral science to management fields like marketing, economics, finance, and organizational behavior. The idea is to aid decision-making for policymakers, individual retail investors, fund managers, traders, analysts, wealth advisors, other managers, and leaders. What influence do incentives have on human decision-making? How can behavioral economics shape public policy? How can neuroscience be used to predict trading decisions of investors? This is just a peep into the diverse range of questions that BSIM 2023 intends to explore. The key objective of the conference is to create a space that enables researchers, regulators, policymakers, practitioners to hold discussions and gain valuable behavioral insights from the perspective of key management subjects. To mark the conference open with an inaugural lamplighting ceremony, we have with us here today Director of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, Professor Bharat Bhasker, our Chief Guest of Honor, Mr. Mohal Lalbhai, Founder of Motor Matterworks, and Chairperson of the NSE CBS, Professor Arvind Sahay, Professor of Marketing and International Business. May we please request our honored guests to come forward to light the lamp. With the conference declared open, may I now introduce to you Chairperson of the NSE CBS, Professor of Marketing and International Business, and author of Brands in the Brain, Professor Arvind Sahay. Professor Arvind Sahay is currently a Professor of Marketing and International Business at IIMA. As Chairperson, Dr. Sahay heads the NSE Center for Behavioral Science in Finance, Marketing, and Economics, and the India Goal Policy Center at IIM Ahmedabad. An alumnus of IIMA and IIT Kanpur, Professor Sahay holds a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin and has taught for 8 years at the London Business School. Dr. Sahay's primary areas of interest include marketing, strategy, pricing, neuroscience and consumer behavior, brand management, and international trade and investment. His executive education and consulting clients come from different sectors, and his teaching ratings are consistently in the 9 to 10 range. Dr. Sahay has led a variety of diverse consulting projects and has done corporate training for over 50 clients in India and abroad. He leads the IIMA Executive Education Program on pricing, neuroscience and marketing, enhancing Salesforce performance, fintech, and applications of behavioral science for CXOs. May we please request Professor Sahay to share his thoughts and introduce to you our esteemed guests.
Respected Director, Professor Bharat Bhasker, Mr. Mohal Lalbhai, founder of Matter Motorworks, many colleagues that I see over here, young researchers, ladies and gentlemen. Also, I should point out, I had not expected to see our sponsors over here, but Dr. Tirthankar from NSE is also over here. Welcome. I think Varuna has given you a sense of the center, but let me share with you why we were so keen to have the center going, and our vision for the center essentially is where one thinks the center should be operating. Behavioral science as an area has been around for a while. Most of you would have heard of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky and Richard Thaler and Leon Zurawicki and many others, Richard Gegerenzer. But the application part of it has not really got much traction so far as business schools, management institutions are concerned. In India, especially as one looks at what is happening, you have institutions like the National Brain Research Center, you have institutions like the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, you have institutions like the Center for Behavior and Cognitive Sciences, and they do excellent work in the hardcore neuroscience part of it, what is happening inside the head at a very physiological and biological level. But there is a huge space where you can use these tools to actually look at applications in marketing, in finance, in economics, in organizational behavior, human resource management. So many areas of application, and to me a management institution is a perfect setting for being able to get those applications out, do work that actually gets applications into the mainstream and helps companies also. The idea is to have impact with companies. As management institutions, we should not be in ivory towers, we should be engaging with companies. And that is where the center comes in. And the purpose of this conference is to provide the space for emerging researchers, people who are interested in this area, and people from industry who would want to engage in this area, where they can come and meet at least once a year, but hopefully more. But to provide that space, that forum where one is able to meet other people doing similar work, build collaborations, and to scale the ecosystem, if you will, so that there is more impact created for companies, for public policy, going forward, because if anything, our country needs more such applications of behavioral science. So it is about behavioral science and management. So with that as the backdrop, let me introduce to you our two distinguished people on the podium over here. Professor Bharat Bhasker, Director of Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He has a PhD and Master's in Computer Science from Virginia Polytechnic Institutions and State University. His bachelor's is from IIT Roorkee. He has served as a Professor of Information Technology and Systems at IIM Lucknow and as Director of IIM Raipur, and also as Mentor Director at IIM Sirmaur. He was honored with the Best Director of Business School Awards for transforming IIM Raipur into a great place to work and for its exponential growth. Professor Bhasker has held various visiting academic positions such as International Expert Advisor at the University of Tenaga National, Malaysia, International Expert Research Grants at the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, Visiting Professor at ESSEC Business School, Distinguished Professor at Chung-Ang University, Seoul, Korea, Research Professor at University of California, Visiting Professor at University of Texas, and Adjunct Faculty at the University of Maryland. He has a rich industry experience in addition to his academic experience, and has held senior positions in multiple organizations such as Sybase, MDL, Hughes, Connectix, and Tata Steel. He has been associated as the Chairman of the Services Sector Development Council, Bureau of Indian Standards, President at the Indian Subcontinent Decision Science Institute, USA, Chairman of the Computer Society of India, Lucknow, and as a member of Board of Governors at various organizations. Welcome, sir. Our keynote speaker for the day is a gentleman called Mohal Lalbhai. Mohal is an alumni of the University of Sheffield with a degree in material science and is working with a company called Matter. He's the founder. And the aim of the company is to drive sustainable change in the energy area. And Matter just unveiled India's first geared electric vehicle motorbike, which is set to revolutionize the future of mobility in India. It's got lots of features such as a gear, liquid cooling, uh, and many other features. One of the reasons I know it is because I have engaged with the company. It is a testament to the company's commitment to pushing boundaries, that they are actually trying to do everything within India. As of now, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mohal, apart from the microprocessors, everything in the motorcycle will probably come, and the cell for the moment will come from within the country. So unlike many other CKD kits, this is going to be a made in India for the world electric motorcycle. With a keen interest in technology, Mohal began his professional journey in 2014 by founding Lalbhai Composite Solutions, a company in composite material space, as a director. Thereafter, he worked with Ethereal Machines in Bangalore, where he dedicated his time to the research and development of new innovative technologies. Ethereal was awarded the CES Best Innovation Award in 2018. And thereafter, what Mohal Bhai has done is he has built Matter electric two-wheelers, energy solutions, and the concept that he's following is that of vertically integrating as a core principle, so that it helps Matter to create solutions across the entire space, mobility and energy systems. You're not limited because you are vertically integrated. By the way, this approach is a very Eastern way, not a Western way, being vertically integrated. Western companies tend to outsource because they are driven primarily by finance. Korean companies, Japanese companies, Indian companies, many of them are integrated for almost philosophical reasons. With the motto of redefining the present and reimagining the future, the idea is to have a tech stack, and this company already has created more than 100 intellectual property right aspects, from patents to design and to trade secrets. So the idea is Matter is trying to create cutting-edge technologies that will benefit society, India, as a country. So with that, let me, so we are very, very pleased, honored to have both Professor Bhasker and Mr. Mohal Lalbhai over here as the speakers to us today. Let me request now our director, Professor Bharat Bhasker, to share his words with our audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind, for introducing and also organizing this great conference in a frontier area. I say it frontier area because there is management research going on, but IIMA Ahmedabad, being a leader, has to break the boundaries. And the latest boundaries which is breaking seems to be in form of behavioral science, applications of behavioral science in management. Let me welcome Mohal Lalbhai, CEO of Matter Motors, Professor Arvind Sahay, Chairperson of NSE Center for Behavioral Science, my distinguished faculty colleagues and all other faculty colleagues who have descended today at IIMA campus, leaders from the industry, our sponsors, and the student participants who are here. Actually, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to inauguration of this third edition of Behavioral Science in Management Conference at the Indian Institute of Management. This conference is intended to create a space for academics, practitioners, and policymakers to come together on a platform where there is a free exchange of ideas based on research of different applications of behavioral science and neuroscience in business and management. As you know, IIMA is an institution that was established in 1961 as a collaborative effort of Government of India, Government of Gujarat, and local industry leaders such as Kasturbai, Lalbhai, and Harvard Business School. It has been at the forefront of management research in India, and Center for Behavioral Science effort is to create new research and applications in this burgeoning new field of management. Today is a particularly wonderful day since we have with us also Sri Mohal Lalbhai, who comes from the same family, who had deep association from the foundation, a time of the foundation of this institute. So far as behavioral science is concerned, it integrates many roles in marketing, HR, leadership, and finance and economics in companies. As we all know, the roots of approach of behavioral science lie in the work of Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky, and Richard Thaler, among many others. Work that challenged many of the assumptions of neoclassical economics. Behavioral science approach to management provides a more nuanced view of management as it impacts so many different dimensions of management such as group dynamics, motivation, communication, pricing, branding, management, customer decision making, political science, voter behavior, and leadership. This implies that behavioral science is becoming increasingly relevant to everyone, irrespective of what role one is in, but even more so for leaders and managers across levels and functional disciplines. Leaders and managers are increasingly recognizing the value of using behavioral science tools and practices to excel in their respective roles. With developments in recent management operations and blended management models, behavioral science is drawing traction across businesses and verticals. The scope is no more limited to any one area or stream of business. Initiated although from OB and HR, marketing and branding, the scope and span has multiplied vastly. You have noticed the recent developments which have been happening in technology. Although we have been talking about digital twins, but digital twins were always about the machinery. You create a digital twin, simulate things, predict the behavior of your actual machine, and continue to monitor the actual machine. But recent developments which are happening in digital twin technology happens to be in silico biological behavior mapping. Now, that's where our work comes in handy, because through computers and algorithms, you are trying to simulate the biological behavior or creating a biological twin of human being. In order to do that, you need lots and lots of data which can actually provide mapping between the actual human being and its twin. Professor Arvind Sahay's work, or his lab and along with his colleagues' work, is going to be a great addition in trying to advance that frontier of technology. Because future of the management is going to be determined, as we say, the future of any management discipline is impacted by the human behavior. If you can simulate that human behavior, predict it in advance, we can also have a greater insight beyond where AI is taking us to a next frontier of human and AI integration in one platform. The last decade, as you say, has seen witnessed the explosion in both research and effective applications of this behavioral science. The area of application and spectrum of behavioral sciences lab established in management institutes like IIMA Ahmedabad are working closely with corporates on multiple projects to gain inputs ranging from talent acquisition, improve employee engagement, encourage changes in behaviors of consumers, define and determine effective ways of interaction between co-workers and clients, generate improved commercial returns for outdoor advertising, and improve decision making for retail investors. Conferences like BSIM, hosted under the aegis of IIMA Ahmedabad, are a good opportunity for academia and industry to come together and explore possibilities and learn from latest research. The level of research in this niche area is unparalleled in India, and with presentations from institutions in India and abroad, we would want this to be the event on the calendar of all the serious researchers in the area of behavioral science. I wish the conference all the best and invite you to derive the maximum value from the presentations, workshops, and panel discussions. Thank you very much.
May I now invite Mr. Mohal Lalbhai to give us his keynote talk. I should share with you that Mohal Bhai and I have been engaged on and off for the last 4.5 years. And one of the reasons I wanted him to come as a keynote speaker was that he represents the younger generation. People like me are now, much older, and most of the people here are from the younger generation. So hopefully there is a better connect as well. Over to you, Mr. Lalbhai.
Thank you, Professor Bhasker and Professor Sahay, for the kind words, and good morning, everyone. I think I'm going to allow a minute for a quick presentation to be set up. So, I'm going to talk about the journey of matter, and the 4 years have probably been one of the most, well, there have been ups and downs over the last 4 years, which have been unprecedented from an industry standpoint in terms of COVID and the residual impacts of COVID, which have gone through, especially when you're talking electric vehicles and semiconductor industries. Things have gone for a toss, and being a startup through those times and navigating things which generally most people don't ever have to navigate is kind of the story I'm planning to talk about today. And it all came down to the people, how we behave in terms of crisis, how we behave in terms of getting lucky. And I'm going to say that a lot often, that last 4 years, there's a lot of luck that has been involved. There are unexpected things which have come our way, and how do we make the most of it? So I'm going to just I'll still start. So, the idea of matter started from a conversation over dinner in 2018. And 2018 was a time when electric vehicles globally were really picking up steam. Elon Musk had said, price of lithium will be 1/10 of what it was in 2012. Things were really coming down. Things were really becoming serious. And the conversation started off on the lines of why isn't India seeing electric vehicles if the Western world is really pushing hard? And electric vehicles come with one inherent benefit, which to the Indian psyche makes most sense, is kitna deti hai. I mean, it saves a lot of money fundamentally. With that, electric vehicles were still not being picked up, and this conversation, that was the first stone in a large avalanche today. And from there, the conversation went on to why aren't Indians picking up vehicles, what's wrong with them, and is there anything we can do about it? From that point on, the conversation started not on whether we should do it or not, how are we going to approach this and how are we going to solve it? What's the team that's going to be required? And well, I did start with a grand ambition that we will not have more than 90 people doing R&D. Today we are sitting at over 400, so that's, there are estimation errors. But going forward, one of the core things that came across was design becomes a very, very important part of whatever you're doing, especially in the world of product in today's age. And however good a service is, if the representation of the service is not precise, if it's not done with attention to detail, customers are going to notice it, and that is where failures start. Somebody recently told me, "Pehle dil se kharidte hai, fir dimag se convince karte hai." So that was more of the essence of where one of my co-founders, Sharan, who's heading design, I mean, at senior management level, we said design is equally important as technology and business, that we need a specific role there. Then the founders, and I mean the founders, we range from somebody in their early 50s to somebody still in their late 20s. So that's a diverse group we have, and I believe it is necessary to capture perspectives from both sides of the aisle. I mean, experience counts, but then there's the age-old question of old versus new. So with that, how do we look at getting the right experience where technologies are more mature, and how do you get in fresh blood over newer conversations like user experience, user interfaces, human machine interfaces? So that's how the founding team, which is quite spread out, came together, and 2019 the journey started, right? So, well, we've skip. If you can move to the next slide, please. That's correct. This is correct. So when we started, when we have such a diverse set of conversations happening in the room together, you have approaches which differ from market segments. You want to go in, uh, help the common man out. You want to go into commercial vehicles, look at that segment, or you want to really go and target the largest volume possible and go to two-wheelers. Now, this is a conversation we've. No, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. So that's where we've had a lot of philosophical differences, even at the founder level, in terms of whether we do LCVs, we do motorcycles, and the one thing that has always helped us in conflict resolution, and conflicts do happen, so that's a given. But the one thing that has always helped us from a conflict resolution perspective is setting the North Star right. I mean, the vision has to be larger than a single individual. It has to be larger than a single organization. It has to be, I mean, when you're talking nation building, it's not one individual who's going to ever end up doing it. Once you start talking on those lines is where conflicts have a common base for resolution, is what is right for that cause, and that's how we started addressing differences in the team, and that's how we suddenly start becoming more and more focused. We are no longer distracted by flights of fancy. We are no longer distracted by conversations which otherwise are detrimental to the cause. And from there came a couple of things, which is, one thing was, we are definitely going to be customer obsessed. So while we started as an electric manufacturer, today we end up calling ourselves, and it's through multiple names, but today we call ourselves a product tech company, because at the end of the day, what we do is to make a product as it needs to live up to the expectations of a consumer, and whatever technology that we build is only to build the product. We will not do technology for the sake of research of doing technology. We need to have something which can be applied onto the field immediately. And with that, as Professor Sahay said, vertical integration became a critical part of it, and kind of ties back to the story that why aren't Indians buying electric vehicles? The reason Indians weren't buying electric vehicles back then was the product was not reliable, never worked, did not deliver, and you couldn't ever say ki I will not buy an Activa and I'll buy an electric scooter. That was never really a conversation. That's the core reason where we set out and we said we want to really change the way things are working. And for most people, and I'm talking about my co-founders as well, for them the idea was at the least a bit scary, because in India nobody had really said I will take up an Indian company, I will hire talent from India, and we will go ahead and do vertical integration. That's not something that most people end up doing. But we said we'll do it the right way. And then once the North Star again came back into conversation that we have to do it in here and we will figure out a way, things started falling in place. I mean, in India, we miss out the fact that most outsourcing work from the West happens in India. So the best talent pool for the outsourced work is still in India. And that's where we started tapping in, and that's how we were able to create a team today which is probably one of the best in terms of creating this kind of product out there. I mean, going from 4 people in a room to 350 or 400 today, that's been a journey. But this was for us most of 2019. This was where the core grassroots of Matter were really set in stone. And after that is a journey of ups and downs. And thank you. So then, came in 2020, and with that came in bad news very early on to the year. And with COVID kicking in, I think the first thing that we had to do is put aside company objectives and take care of the team. Because if you don't take care of the team, post the pandemic, you will really have no company left. So that is where, for us, the first challenges were, apart from getting work done, were how do you make sure that people are still engaged at home? How do they not disconnect from the company entirely in the 2-3 month lull that is coming in? And lucky enough, we were able to kind of transfer systems to them, and let's call it under the guise of work, they were still core connected to the company, which was the most important piece at that point in time, because we were very early into the journey. We were 12, 14 months in. But making sure you don't lose the team that you've spent the last 14 months building was priority number one. And with that, as soon as we came out of the pandemic, I think the energy levels in the team were so high because of that, that probably in the first month we built out our first prototypes, and we are now just 18 months into our journey from day zero. So once the first prototypes were done, energy levels are very high, and that is when overconfidence kicks in. The minute overconfidence kicks in, you start hitting setbacks of your own making. So, I mean, we probably blew up the first batteries that we ever made, because we were so enthusiastic, we kind of put safety on the side. And with that, we realized that yes, Indian weather conditions require more work than was originally anticipated, and we said, fine, we'll introduce liquid cooling technology. The minute we introduce liquid cooling technology, it's not easy when you say you're going to do it all on your own. I mean, when you say you're going to do it on your own, means you'll probably do a thing or two or three. Every time you integrate something new, every time you come up with a new idea which you say has to be implemented, you are now no longer talking about, I'll sit on a computer, I'll model it, I'll make it, I'll put it in. It doesn't really work that way. There are some 14 systems that need to work with it. Everyone needs to go back to the drawing board and make changes. So that implication of the overconfidence, and I'm a person who will always see things in a positive light, was that we were able to solve a problem which we would have found 2-3 years later. And for me, that is one of the goods, the bads, and the uglies of being in a startup. We really rush things, and rushing is good as long as it's good. So that's where we are. You can move to the next one. So coming 2021 again, and again the pandemic strikes. We have the second waves, the third waves, the fourth waves, and on coming in. This time the challenges actually become more acute, because this time you're now dealing with suppliers, you're dealing with the outside world. You've stopped dealing internally, you've started going outside, and travel is difficult. Your cross-border conversations are very, very difficult. You're not really able to kind of convince the guy on the other side that you are a startup, but you're a serious startup. It's really, people look at you and say, हाँ बच्चे हैं, क्या कर लेंगे? Even though you have guys with experience. I mean, you have guys who've been buying millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff from the same guys about 5 years ago. But now, because you're in a startup, there is, there's serious disregard for what you are about to do. And then hiring became challenging. Work from home really changed the way people were expecting the new lay of the land to happen. And being in hardware, you can't really work from home. I mean, if you can't touch the part you're making, you're really, really struggling to do it. Going forward, I think for us, when we moved into the new R&D facility in 2021, so up till now we were really, really working out of a garage in my house. So I never drove to work for 2 years, walked to work. But once we moved into the R&D facilities, when really the conversation became more concrete, more focused. And that is a time it started dawning on people that this is now serious. This is no longer a garage shop job. This is no longer just making prototypes. We are now really driving to the end. And that is the time for us became very critical to keep the team together, because now you're growing very fast. So we went from 40 to 90 to 250. And that is where challenges come in. Managers, middle managers, when people are new into the company and you're expecting them to connect with the vision in less than 2 weeks before they start hiring others, that's not going to happen. So how do you handhold people? How do you go down? Town halls have become, I mean, it's a cliche term, but essentially the idea is to let everyone know what is happening in the organization at the same time, because you do not want Chinese whispers in an organization which is this young and which is moving this fast. So from there, I think going into, if you can move to the next slide. Going into 2022 is when we have unveiled the first product. I mean, the building block of the first product took about 3 years to come together and put up. These milestones for the team have become the driving point. So, because at an organization level, you're growing so fast, and from a structure perspective, you are essentially a matrix organization. Getting people aligned to one target, I mean, there's only so much program managers can do. Until unless there's a deadline with an event parked, people will not run towards it. And that's what we started doing from the second half of 2022. We started setting ourselves ambitious target. We said we'll have a tech day. We will kind of bring in the media and we'll bring in the journalists and really educate them about what goes into making an electric. Now, for us who are sitting on this side of the aisle, we're like, ye to pata hai, ye to pata hai, ye to pata hai. What is the need to explain any of this? But when we had our first interactions with the media and we really opened the doors and said, come in and have a look at the R&D facility, that's when we realized that, well, there is fake news. So there is a lot of conversations which happen, but there is no proof to the pudding which is ever supplied. And we were the first to provide that proof, saying this is exactly how we are doing things, what we claim to be doing. That is where conversations and the tone, I mean, the media approach towards us became really soft. They started appreciating whatever we were saying because we had something to show for it. Kind of going into the launch event, did a launch event, unveil the product, and then again, as most marketing guys end up doing, we did not give all the information because that's to generate more publicity, but so be it. Going forward from here, one key thing which we changed as an organization is, up till 2022, we were all believers, innovators, for the lack of a better word, employees of the organization. In 2022, we made a conscious call that we are going to convert employees, believers, and innovators to shareholders of the organization. So, in 2022, Matter took a conscious call that every single individual who is contributing into the organization will have some sort of stock option exposure. And from there, we have seen significant change in approach. I mean, people who never used to speak up started speaking up and saying, "Bhai, tu galat kar raha hai." And it doesn't matter who they say it to. I mean, people come up to me and say it all the time. So, well, it's good because I need to know they're connected. And for me, that's the biggest sign that they are connected if they feel hurt by a decision being taken by the management. So, going from here, kind of coming into 2023, we hosted the Auto Expo, and we were present at the Auto Expo, and that was the time when Matter finally got an opportunity to truly showcase the roadmap towards its vision and mission. I mean, we showcased the current product, future upcoming products, and said this is exactly what we are going to do. And more from a, what can I say, media or consumer, it wasn't really for the media or the consumers, it was more for the team itself, for the partners and the ecosystem, because without these pieces coming together, you're never going to reach the consumer. So with that, we kind of commissioned the manufacturing facility. And the last piece on communication here is more about, now we are 350 strong in Ahmedabad. We have offices outside of Ahmedabad, and town halls aren't really possible without being in person. So that's a challenge which we are still trying to solve, but we have tried a few things. Don't think most of them have been successful, but video calling really doesn't work. It does not work when you have 60 people sitting in Pune and you're trying to kind of get the same passion and energy communicated to them. We've tried, and I can say I've really tried, but we have not really been able to do it. But this is just a short journey of Matter and what we guys have been up to. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhasker, Mr. Lalbhai, and Professor Sahay for the insightful and welcoming addresses. We have 5 minutes for a Q&A session. Please note that those who are attending online can leave their questions in the comments box. Kunal, would you like to take over from here?
Hello, Mohan sir. My question is, you had mentioned about startup as a brand being difficult to accept for the general audience. How do you plan to change the lack of trust, not because it is due to the product or due to the lack of awareness of the brand, but just because of the fact that it is coming from a startup? So even if you're going to build a brand, ultimately, do you want to associate yourself with being a startup with the general audience, or how do you plan to change that?
So the word startup is essentially used to define a foundling. Once you reach scale, I mean, people still call Zomato, Ola, Swiggy, they're all startups for the nomenclature. And the word startup is not as significant going into the future as the brand value you are creating in the minds of the consumer. If it's a startup which has created a certain brand or a perception in your mind and you're acceptable with that and you want to consume their services or product, that's completely fine from an organization perspective. But I wouldn't really focus too much on the tag of whether I'm a startup or not. I would rather focus more on what the consumer is wanting and how the consumer is perceiving me, my product and my services. That is more important than the nomenclature of the tag startup or no. It really, I do not see much benefit that comes out of it. There are, yes, you can be a startup. The government does offer a lot of incentives for starting businesses. There are a lot of things that you get which do help in your journey. But once your product is established, once you're in the market, what is more important is your word of mouth, touch and feel, and at least for us, touch and feel is very important, because until somebody experiences a motorcycle, there's only so much conviction I can give you based on videos or advertisements. So the test ride, until you don't reach that point, yes, I will do everything to get you there. But once you test drive it, the product needs to speak for itself.
You spoke about like starting in 2018 and now we're here. The things have changed dramatically in terms of how EVs are perceived, right? Like from 2018 to now, it has become like at least center of all the conversation. So how are you navigating this change of people's enthusiasm or at least interest in EVs?
Well, what has happened for the good. I no longer need to convince somebody that electric is something you should consider. I don't need to convince somebody that electrics are safe. I don't need to convince somebody electrics make sense from a commercial angle. All of these things, now the consumers are quite well educated on this concept, and which is, I mean, compared to what I would have done in 2018 to compared to what I'm doing in 2023, my reach has become wider. My costs have come down from marketing and promotion standpoint. So I am riding the wave. I don't see any reason not to. And the core point here is that it was the pandemic years which have really changed consumer sentiment over electric mobility, over pollution. I mean, we've seen images of mountains being seen in the north from miles and miles away. So those are the things which have really affected consumer perception. It has warmed them up to the idea of electric vehicles, and I'm not saying electric vehicles are going to, stay exactly in the same form factor and shape today. 5 years later, they will be in much better condition with technology evolving, and they're going to just keep continually getting better and better and better. But for what is available today in India as compared to what was available when we started, as compared to what was available in 2013, we have crossed tens of generations in terms of technology and product maturity. So it is the right culmination of consumer confidence, expectations and understanding, and the product availability today.
Hi. As organizations become bigger and bigger, the routines comes into play, right? And it has been said, as you mentioned as well, that when you start labeling a particular company as a startup, there there's a certain kind of mindset that the consumers have about the product, right? But you being the founder, you see there's a startup culture which is also important in the team, because as organization will become bigger and bigger and scaling would also happen, the entrepreneurial culture in the teams would also decrease eventually, right? Because the decision making would not be as nimble as and as not as swift as before, right? So as a founder who would want entrepreneurial culture and the startup culture to be there inside the organization, but the consumers should not see it as a startup, how do you solve this paradox? And eventually going ahead, you would also scale up, right? Then the real paradox will happen, how you want your brand to be projected in the market. How would you do this?
So, I think the first thing and the most critical thing is that when you're hiring senior leadership in an organization, they need to have the entrepreneurial spirit. If they don't have it, they are not going to pass it down. And generally in an organization, you always look up to your boss's boss, or whatever you want to call that structure. So the go-getter attitude is something which is very critical to us when we are hiring. You might not be qualified exactly to fit the role. There might be somebody who has better credentials for the role, but if they don't have the go-getter attitude, we will pass and move to the person who has that attitude. Because being a startup, our core objective is to disrupt and innovate. We can't operate in the same way a 50 or 100-year-old company does. So for that very reason, if we have to be disruptive, we have to have that entrepreneurial spirit. If we lose that flame, we are no longer a startup by any definition. So to hold that flame, it always starts at the top, and you start using this filter going all the way down. I mean, just to give you an example, we have architects who are doing automotive design. Just because they were curious enough and they wanted to figure it out, we will give you a chance, because if you have that ability to hack your way through, then that's good enough. Because most things which are logic driven, especially in engineering, I mean, it's just a logic, right? Everything else Google will tell you. So yeah.
Okay, one more question, and then we'll have to continue with the schedule.
Hi, sir. First of all, great presentation. Your story was very inspiring. This coming from me being a startup owner as well. So my question for you is, considering that electric vehicles and the increase in their popularity, especially in the western part of the world, comes from this whole new wave of sustainability and importance of sustainability that's coming through, would you consider Matter Motors a social enterprise? And if yes, would you be looking at public-private partnerships at any point in the future, or is the company more geared towards like a consumer-based strategy?
So if I go back to our core vision, and there are multiple ways I can say it. I can always say accelerating India to energy independence. I can say becoming the most disruptive player. The idea here is to really push electric for the better, and I wouldn't really say we are social, because we are focused on the consumer. I would say we are focused especially on the product, because that is where as an organization our edge and technology moat lies. And for that reason, I think the core idea for us is build products which create value for the consumer, and that's the reason the consumer should pick it up. The value could be in the form of environmental impact reduction, the value could be in cost of ownership, the value could be in convenience, or it could be all three. So that's the approach of looking at it, because consumer being the center, everything for us revolves around the consumer.
Thank you. This marks the end of our inaugural session. May I please request Professor Arvind Sahay to felicitate Professor Bharat Bhasker and Mr. Mohal Lalbhai with the token of our gratitude. we will now begin the next session at 10:30 a.m., where we have a talk with Professor Vinod Prasad, who I will introduce once we begin the session at 10:30. So you can take a break till then. Thank you.